Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite necromancer here, practicing warlock. And tonight I want to talk to you about the mentality of a practitioner. What do I mean by mentality? If we look at the modern practitioner, there's a lot of pride, a lot of arrogance behind the type of practice that they do. If you're a Satanist, then you are your own God, right? Therefore, you come across as a God. It's basically that pride, that ego. And if it goes unchecked, it's a downfall, basically. They call it the counteractive pride, the nine satanic sins, for an example. Jonathan Kirkland, welcome. If we get into Wiccan and paganism, it is a delusion of being humble, but yet it's more about sexism and feminism these days. It's literally about control. But if you look at most of the religions today, it is reverse Christianity. So, what is the mentality of a practitioner? Well, you want to look at the root of the words, the word basically, mentality, the mind state. You want to break down what a practitioner is. Most religions talk about the mind, the body, and the soul of a practitioner. For an example, Andrew Womack, who is the author of Spirit, Soul, and Body, utilized the scripture of the Bible to break it down. And he basically broke it down into three sections: soul, spirit, and body. So if we look at the definition of, or I should say, the root of the word spirit, that is called panina, panema. Okay, and I probably just butchered that word, and if I did, I do apologize. That is basically spelled Pneuma. Okay, and you can actually Google this. And what this means is the spirit is who you are. It is basically your character, your mentality of what you as an individual are about. Okay. If you get excited over fire, then guess what? You're a pyromancer. Okay. If you are excited about chasing tornadoes and storms and becoming a storm chaser, then guess what? You're a meteorologist, you're a Euromancer, a practitioner of the air, maybe even geomancy, if you think about it, because that tends to go um, hand in hand, both air and earth. So the mentality of the spirit literally comes down to what you're excited about, what you and your essence is about through what you practice, what you represent, and how you represent yourself as a practitioner of witchcraft, be it black magic or whatever. If we look at the definition of soul, the root etymology of this, you can find it in Greek, Chinese, Hebrew, Egyptian, and English. And what's interesting here is the root name of this from the Greek definition is nephesh. Okay, nephesh. That's Nephesh. Okay. Basically, the soul is the immortal essence of who you are. In Slavic mythology, think of Kakashi, the immortal. Think of the black pellet, for an example, the grimoire, the black pellet, because in this essence, in this case, you want to look at it as the black hen. Okay, you are literally placing your soul in a box, which is in something else, and something else, and something else, and so forth, and hidden away on an island that nobody, and not even the practitioner, has a clue of where it's hidden. Okay, so basically, Kakashi is known as Kakashi the Immortal. Okay, that's kind of interesting because if you think about how religionists today, philosophers view the soul, they see it as the immortal essence that lives on after the body dies. And if you think about it, death is only the beginning, especially from that of the perspective of a necromancer. Because the whole journey of being a necromancer is to become immortal, to become a lick, a grand lick, or whatever, an immortal being of lichdom, to cheat the reaper of his prize, if you will. So if we go into the body has been viewed as many different things, okay, depending on which perspective that you practice, okay? If you're in the medical field, then you're going to be calling it the lick or the glick, the cadaver, the corpse, okay? Um, if you're into religions like, say, JCI, the Judo Christian institutions, then you're going to view it as the body being the bread, the bread being the symbolism of the body of Christ. Okay, whereas the blood is the elixir that you drink. Okay, so basically, the Greek term is soma. Okay, Soma. Okay, and this is actually derivative, if you will, of somota. Okay, now what's interesting here is most people don't break down the mind, body, and soul. Okay, depending on which philosophy you're into, you're going to call it the mind, body, and soul, or the spirit, um, soul, and body, whatever you want to call it. Now, a true practitioner of the arts, is not going to be concerned with borders. They're not going to be concerned with segregation or limitations. They're going to delve face first into their studies. If you look at the historical folklore of the Magi, for an example, the Magi were known to lock themselves away for years to master the arcana. If we go back to the first, second, and third dynasty of Egypt, we see the Sem priest, the Shem priesthood. That's Sem, priesthood. Okay. Now, these priests had different denominations within their hierarchy, if you will. For an example, you had one who's, one level of priesthood, which their sole responsibility was to worship the spirits that they worked with. In that time, it would have been either Isis or Anubis, okay, the Lord of the Dead, okay. But it also came down to the time of the year and the rites that they were performing publicly, okay. So when we look at this particular one dealt with the public, and another one whose sole job was to take care of the corpses. This means embalming, okay, organ removal, mummification, and cleansing the body, okay, reading the rites from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, even. So there was different levels of the priesthood that were very historically known, okay, and on some occasions they were run out of town. Now, what's interesting is if we jump forward to, say, the 10th century, the late 10th century, to the 12th century, we also see what is known as a group known as the Hashishin. The Hashishin was founded by a Shem priest that was excommunicated from Giza. Okay. Now, what's interesting to note is that when you look at this particular formation of priesthood, these were holy monks who were also highly trained in combat. 6th century to roughly around the 13th century. Okay. Credited with over 300 kills. Okay. Confirmed kills. Now, what's interesting is Simsera is what they were known by. Okay. Simsera. And this is an Arabic word, also known in Sanskrit as being assassin. Okay. Now, you don't normally think priests being associated with assassins, right? Well, guess what? History has shown that there are numerous warrior monks. I mean, I can name off at least a half a dozen right off the bat. Some of the more well known, like I said, were the Hashishin, but also the Knights of Templar. Okay. A lot of people don't realize that these were ordained monks. Ordained monks means that they were holy men who worshiped their God. Okay. In this case, Jesus Christ. Okay. They were the bishop or the let's go the Pope's private army, and they were known as the protectors of the roads, the crossroads. Those who journeyed on the roads were protected by the knights right up until they decided to invade the Middle East. The Crusades, the Holy Wars, they were a part of. I believe it was the second or third crusade, they were disbanded and considered to be outlaws, just like the Hashishin, just like the Shem priesthoods, and so forth throughout history. But if you look at it, what does it take to be a practitioner? This doesn't really answer that, does it? So you have to delve further into your practices, into your spirituality. Some people will go into philosophy. I mean, I recommend Japanese traditions of Bushido and Shintoism. You may even want to get into Stoicism, if you will. Even if you get into the philosophy of, say, or Aurelius, Marcus Aurelius, very great philosopher, second century. He was a politician. He would think of him as being a commoner of both Republican and Democrat in today's economy, you know, government setup, if you will. Now, what's interesting about Bushido is the art of samurai. These people were highly religious. They stayed out in the wilderness. They were almost like hermits, but yet if you look at their dedication to their craft, they were master swordsmen, the Ronin, if you will. Later on, between the 16th and 18th century, they became the powerhouse between the Japanese Imperial Army. Think of them as the Three Musketeers, the Musketeers section of Europe, or and if you want to get into play work, get into the private army of embassies and the King's Guard and such. All of these things are where these originated. Now, if you think about it, the spiritualism is how they commune. They meditated. to find their true self, to find the absence of ego and pride. They didn't want anything. They didn't seek out popularity. They were more reserved. Their code of conduct, their ethics are unequaled. They're unbridled, in my opinion. But you look at how they handled themselves. They put their family first. They were loving, they were compassionate and caring. But yet you challenge them to a duel and they'll wipe the floor with you. I mean, you take 300 samurai on horseback against a platoon of infantrymen. They will charge that line that has cannons and rifles and handguns without fear. Because if you think about it, and if you really, really think about it, and I want to kind of bring this up here because it's actually a very good aspect here. And I think I put it over here. Where is it? I was actually studying this earlier, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I think it's right here. There we go. No. What did I do with that? So I wanted to bring this up because I thought it was pretty cool. The different aspects of death that really go along with traditions of practices within this area. And I do apologize. I've got a lot of paperwork here because I've been doing a lot of studying and research over the last month because I am getting ready to get into my 6th essay. So if you look at, for an example, the jihad, okay, of Islam, these are basically holy rites that were done to declare themselves already dead. Okay. In this sense, if you think about a religious perspective of Islam, these people were dedicated to their communities, and when they take this final word, this word of death, and consider themselves dead, they will die without question. Let's just take a moment for an example. Throughout history, we see different things. We got the Oklahoma bombing. We got the New York attacks. Okay, but what about the embassy bombings and stuff like that? Okay, think about it. It takes guts to strap something like that on you and just walk into a place and pull that trigger, so to speak. They did this without fear. This is a jihad. Okay, it means holy warrior. Okay, so if you think Samsara being an assassin, they've already accepted that they would most likely die. It's a suicide run. You take a samurai, okay? They've already accepted death. So therefore, what's the fear? A necromancer works with death. Death is what we become because we work with it. We work towards that immortality. Like I said, the very depiction would be Kakashi. However, if you want to get into Egyptian mythology, you look at how Ra, in one story, tore apart after killing the mate of Osiris, of Isis, Osiris, okay, the god of iniquity, okay, was cut up, sent to various different portions of the world, areas of the world. Isis went and got him, became associated with Anubis. And what's ironic is if you actually look at the depictions, Osiris became known as the mother of witchcraft. She was the mother figure by aligning herself with Anubis, the jackal-headed dog, lord of the underworld. She became acquainted with death. Together, they put him back together and brought him back to life. That was just one story of his death. So think about this for just a moment. Just think about the nature of a practitioner. What does it take to be a practitioner? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice to become that legend? I'm not talking being a tyrannical, egotistical spiritualist, a zealot. No. I'm talking about humbling yourself to the point where you go out, you seek that knowledge, you dedicate every waking hour or free time to studying and mastering your craft. Yamato, what was his name? A very well-known swordsman. He was known for his rash techniques to master his skills. And we're talking about a guy that would go up into the mountains, stand underneath a freezing water, fall as this water is going down and practice martial arts. He would practice his techniques for hours. And what did he do throughout his long life? As he became a Ronin. He became one of the most feared Ronins. Why? Because he was gaining that experience. He was mastering his craft, at least right up until he got stomach cancer and then became a monk and wrote the book of the Five Rings. Okay, very very good book, and it goes into the elements of life, the five elements of life, and kind of breaks it down into what we are as practitioners. It doesn't matter if you're into voodoo. It doesn't matter if you're into Satanism or shamanism. There are five different elements that make you up, that define your nature, your personality, your character, and it allows you to understand why you, as an individual, are obsessed with magic. Why are you obsessed with black magic and working with demons? What is it about your drive and that hunger, that thirst that drives you to delve into otherworldly knowledge, to better yourself, to master not only yourself but your world around you? Think of it like this. Necromancy, much like being an alchemist, is about destruction and creation. Without blood, you will not be alive. But yet, blood is the most powerful component that a practitioner has to perform spells, to commune with spiritus, with the spirits, the demons, the jinn, the devi, the loa, the orisha. If you look at it in that perspective, you're giving your most vital essence as an offering and a sacrifice. As an alchemist, you're breaking things down to its most basic components to create something new. Every time you delve into gnosis, you are in fact adding to your arsenal. You are adding to your enrichment, your betterment, and you're evolving through what you're studying and practicing. So, what is the mentality of a practitioner? That overwhelming urge to do better, to be better, that drive for self mastery and self evolution. Because let's face it, what you're practicing is not about herd mentality. It is not about subjugation or subdivisions. That's only mankind's limited perspectives. And all it's made out to be is to keep you living in fear. That fear prevents you from reaching outside of your normal activities. But it's not until you break those chains and you start learning for yourself, you start delving into literature, you start delving into folklore, mythology, you start delving into the actual practices from various different regions of the world. And you're going to see the commonalities that all practitioners have. There's only one group that views magic as evil, and that's the Hermetic traditions. That is the Hebraic systems, the JCI, the Judeo Christian institutions. So think about that for just a moment. I want you to earnestly go into your altar room, in front of your temple, light that single candle, sit down, and I want you to ask yourself, why did you get into magic? What do you hope to gain from magic, from communing with demons or spirits? It doesn't matter if it's your ancestors. It doesn't matter if it's demons. Because let's face it, in the Bible, it talks about angels and demons, right? Now, what are the perspectives of angels? They're known as watchers, they're known as warriors, and they're known as messengers. Okay? They're only sent from their master forth to you to either slay you, guide you, like say out of the book of Tobit, the last brother to marry that one woman who married his other brothers who were slain by Asmodeus, or let's say, for an example, viewing demons as evil. Now, if you actually take the time to study what demons are, study what the are. Jinn are elemental spirits. Demons represent elemental components. The Devi represent elemental components. And if you think about the practices of what you're doing, demons are guides. Demons are protectors. The very Greek word is daemon. The cocoa daemon being painful, harmful to humanity, right? So I want you to think about this. What is it about these spirits that you think is evil? What is it about witchcraft and sorcery that you think is evil? What classification makes a practice good or evil? Where does this root analogy, this etymology come from? I want you to break that down. Think about it. Okay? Go into that altar room, go into your chamber, light that candle. What do you expect to get out of your magic? What drives you to commune with certain spirits? What is it about that spirit that you want, that you like, that you want to work with? But most importantly, what is it about magic that inspires you to either create or to destroy? You see, as a necromancer, I've had the honor and privilege of studying various different traditions. One of my favorite is the Dukan out of Indonesian shamanism. This particular group of practitioners were both healers and destroyers. They practiced what was known as Santet. Now, Santet is one of 6 practices that they did. And what it is they petition spirits to place certain items into their target, their victim. This is known as a curse, a hex, okay? Which basically led to the 1998 assault and, let's just say, violent mass murder of over 150 to 300 Dukan in 1998. So the witchcraft trials are still going on in the world today. But what is also interesting is they were known as healers, just like in Brujeria practices. You get into Santeria practices, and you're going to see healers. Do they get paid to perform curses? Yes. Do other practitioners, such as Satanists, Wiccans, pagans, those who sell their services, perform both healing rites and destruction rites? Yes. So you have to ask yourself as an individual, what am I about? What do I want to represent? Why did I get into magic? Why do I want to work with this particular type of spirits? The thing I like about necromancy is I'm not bound by borders. I can work with any spirits that I want, that want to work with me, to help guide me to better my life, to better my understanding, to grow, to mature through their guidance. But you got to open up the doors. You got to remember that these spirits were already there. They want to work with you. You just have to learn to attune to their essence, to their current. But again, you're the only one that can answer that question. You're the only ones who can answer those questions for yourselves. So I've spent since the 14th and 15th of December, delving into research, delving into my own practices, meditating, performing rites, getting more and more closer to my beloved patroness. And I'm doing this because I want to. It feels right to me, and it's what I'm about. I'm a teacher, I'm a guide, but I'm also an ordained archbishop. So I have a responsibility as an elder, okay? But at the same time, I too am still learning. Your learning never ceases. Your learning and growth never stops. Those who tell you otherwise are liars, and I would not follow them. But I'm also not going to leave anything behind that is going to hinder either myself or others from learning and growth and through your own personal growth. So, but like I said, I want you to meditate upon the mentality of a practitioner. What does it take to become a mage? What does it take to become a practitioner? What do you want to represent? Who do you want to become? What do you want to become? Why do you want to become that? Because that's a good starting point for you neophytes, acolytes, beginners. But more so once you get into the adepthood, even if you're more advanced, like say 30 plus years, you're still going to have to ask those questions. I've been doing this for 35 years, about 30, 35 years area now, since I was 11. And I can tell you that every time I turn around, I'm peeling that layered back like an onion. Each level of gnosis. Doesn't matter if it's blood sorcery. It doesn't matter if it's death magics. It doesn't matter if it's philosophy. There is always another level of understanding underneath it. But you got to be the one to seek it out. You got to ask the questions, and you got to go by the code, the very creed of your practice. I want to thank Jonathan Kirkland for jumping on here with me. Matthew Watson jumped on here. Welcome. And Maximilian, welcome. For now, have a good night, and until next time, I'm out.